The 1960s are remembered as troubled, rebellious, but changing times. Even the art and literature, of course, then reflected the mood of this country. And one of the most memorable examples was the movie Cool Hand Luke. The author of that book and screenplay lives in South Florida, and Nancy Solomon reports.
His movie opens the way his adult life began. A young man is in trouble. Donn Pearce was in the safe-cracking business, but like Paul Newman, soon found himself in the hands of the law.
What are you doing there, fella?
I'm just captive of a meat thing.
You better come along with us.
It's been about 30 years since Pearce paid for his crime by spending time on a Florida chain gang. When he got out, he joined the Merchant Marines, then settled down to write of prison life and of a legendary convict, Cool Hand Luke. It took years of slaving over his typewriter, but Pearce finally had the book published. Then in 1967, he co-authored the screenplay. That year in Hollywood brings back bittersweet memories.
They didn't like me very much, for lots of reasons. First of all, writers have a very low position in Hollywood. And belatedly, I realized that in their concept, I was not really a writer. I was an ex-convict who happened to write a book. And I couldn't get anybody to even understand what I meant when I say, hey, let's see some real work. They didn't even understand the concept. I mean, these are all pussycats sitting around in bars getting fat, you know.
Aside from being the technical advisor, Pearce had a small part in the movie playing one of the convicts. But he claims he was pushed in the background.
And every once in a while, I would try to invent a little shtick for myself to get into the film. For instance, a jumping rope while wearing leg irons, which is quite a trick. And, but these Hollywood guys, the next thing I know, while I was turning the rope, skipping rope, I forget his name, and it's just as well. He's very, very short. He's not a dwarf or anything, but he's a very short guy, covered with hair and tremendous muscles. He's a former weightlifter. He jumps into the rope and starts spinning around. I said, this is really what they mean when they say upstaging. Here, I'm the clown turning the rope. He's the one that did the trick.
Pearce desperately wanted to be part of the chain gang recreation, especially since he embellished upon the legendary Cool Hand Luke with his own experiences. Working in his yard, he still remembers some of them.
Nobody could outwork me. I was fat. I wasn't the biggest guy, but I was the fastest, and I was the one who could do it for 12 hours straight. Just go. It was a kind of a strange kind of a rebellion. It was a thing that now that you're down in the lowest possible situation, the only way you could fight back, in an abstract way, fighting back, because by doing more work, you're not fighting back at all. You're doing what they want you to do. But by doing more than you have to do, it's a kind of an abstract rebellion or a daring. It's a defiance.
Hey, buddy, slow down. That's a long road.
Yeah, well, the man wants speed, let's just give it to him. Ram it in, break it off. Yeah!
You were not even allowed to look at the free world traffic going by. That was considered eyeballing, which was a serious crime. You were not allowed to look at a free person. Of course, it was done surreptitiously. There's a whole art of eyeballing.
Bring them on here, boss.
You see that? You see that?
I got eyes, don't I? I'm not gonna see something.
I was the big eater. I was the big worker. Kind of perverse pride in that. It's kind of...
I can eat 50 eggs.
Nobody can eat 50 eggs.
You just said he could eat anything.
You ever eat 50 eggs?
Nobody ever eat 50 eggs.
Hey, Babaluga, we got a bet here.
My boy says he can eat 50 eggs, he can eat 50 eggs.
Yeah, but in how long?
An hour.
The egg-eating thing, it never actually took place, but the bet did. It was true up to the point of the actual contest.
Ready? Go!
1, 2, 3.
But we had to get the eggs was a big deal, you know, and it took a couple of weeks, and finally the guy watched how I could eat, and he chickened out. I'll never know whether I would have won it or not.
The time's up. 10, get it down to 9, 8, get it down to 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Hold it! He didn't swallow the last.
No, he didn't swallow it.
You think so, huh? Well, let's take a look here. Open that mouth.
I was one of the few guys who did not have a nickname. They called me Don. There's a very subtle kind of a respect there.
Yeah. Right there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
Oh,
Lights up, right?
He beat you at nothing. Just like today when he kept coming back at me with nothing.
Yeah, well, sometimes nothing can be a real cool hand.
Move over. Go sit in here next to my boy. Here, Luke.
But unlike the folk hero played by Newman, Pearce is more extroverted, more outspoken, which could explain the final clash between himself and the Hollywood gang. When everyone gathered in the studio, a crew member sarcastically started rating the actors.
This was through a bullhorn, I want you to know. A bullhorn in a movie studio. So finally he said, Donn Pearce, you have no rating. I think it had to be the absolute profundity of it, because he was absolutely right. I mean, if you want to look at this analytically. Anyway, I turned around and belled him in the mouth, and of course everybody went hysterical. It was like the killer. I couldn't believe the reaction that they had. I mean, to them it was the killer come loose. I'm sure they're convinced I had killed people and armed robberies, but I just wasn't telling about it, you see.
Back home in Broward County, he tried his luck at writing again, but the two novels he produced, one about South Florida's elderly and the other a novel based on his years at sea, didn't sell too well.
Neither one was reviewed in the Miami Herald.
And freelancing for magazines just wasn't paying the bills. So for the past 4 years, Pearce has been a private investigator.
Do you know this gal?
It's often mundane work, but a necessity since most of the $80,000 he made from the movie is gone. The movie, in retrospect, Pearce claims Hollywood made it into something it wasn't.
People see it as a social comment because it came out, the movie was released in, I think, 1967. So by pure coincidence, it had overtones which were not actually intended.
Sorry, Luke. I'm just doing my job. You gotta appreciate that.
Nah. Calling it your job don't make it right, boss.
And in fact, the true subject had nothing to do with prison or criminality, as a matter of fact. It was the condition of the human race.
Pearce is now 50 and somewhat worried about his future. He wants to write but is discouraged. He says he's the victim of bad luck and bad timing. Sounds like someone else we know.
On my knees asking. Yeah, that's what I thought. I guess I'm pretty tough to deal with, huh?